Hello, everybody. This is Jamie.
And this is Heather, and welcome to Using Our Inside Voice, a podcast where we awaken to the extraordinary meaning of everyday mundane life by passing it through a particle collider of different and differing perspectives. Today we're using our inside voice to discuss, to continue our discussion on this season of shifts.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so tired from shifting.
I bet you are.
Oh my gosh. So tired. Tired of shifting, tired from shifting. Can we please stop shifting? I'm looking forward to the results of the shifting, but I'm not happy doing the shifting.
I hear you. I hear you. And it's funny because I was thinking about, so if you follow us on Instagram, we post really every day. And basically the way the posts work is that unless we're doing something like a oracle reading, Heather creates some really amazing artwork. And sometimes she's doing you're welcome. You are doing an awesome job. It's adorable and I love it.
Yay.
So usually Heather is creating some really awesome artwork for us. And sometimes she's contributing the text, but most of the time it's me taking whatever that artwork is and then adding music to it and text to it. And it was funny because, and usually she'll give it to me like the day before is when I'll get the artwork to do the post. And so she sent me the artwork for yesterday's post, or for today's post yesterday evening. And it was pretty funny because we were just in the middle of, my husband and I were out doing errands yesterday. And in the morning, he came to me and he said, I have this project and I want to record something. Can you help me record since you have the whole setup for the podcast and everything? I'm like, yeah, sure, not a problem. So we get home, we get done sorting out our stuff from running errands, and I get her post and I'm like, cool, I got it. Everything looks good. And I look at the art and I'm like, oh, that's nice. That's awesome. I could do something with that. And I start setting things up for my husband to record his little project that he needed to record. And it's really not supposed to be something like major. It should have been a fairly simple deal. So I come over to the computer and I turn everything on and bring up the program that I was going to have him record and set him up. I'm like, well, here you go. Everything's turned on. Just, follow the screen, press the button, do your thing, and press stop when you're done. It's that simple. So I'm sitting next to him on the couch and he starts doing his thing. And he stumbles a couple of times. And I'm like, okay, well, press pause or stop. And then, since you're going to reset anyway, why don't you listen back to what you just recorded? And he's like, okay, I can do that. So he's got headphones on and I am watching him press the buttons and he presses play, but I'm hearing it faintly. And I'm like, where is do you have that turned up really loud? Like, good Lord, like how loud do you need that in your headphones? He's like, I can't hear anything through the headphones. I'm like, wait a second. Well, why is that happening? This should not be happening. Because I had checked our settings. It was supposed to be going through the external mic as he was recording, and he should have been hearing it through the headphones. And yet it was coming out of the regular computer speaker. And I'm like, that is incorrect. So move aside. Let me see what's happening here. And I'm checking all the settings. All the settings are correct. And I'm like, this is really weird. So I stop it several times, turn it back, play it again. And not only am I only hearing it through the computer speakers, but it sounds really faint and like not good quality. And I'm like, well, this is bullshit because you're recording through the mics. I know what these sound like. It should be spot on. Anyway, I push him aside and I start looking at all the things and I start realizing that the system that I usually use for editing, which you can also use to record, and it's just not set up to use in like a podcast capacity, all of a sudden will not record using the external mic and will not put sound through the headphones. So I'm very slowly transitioning into meltdown phase as I'm like, okay, let me tinker with this and try to make it work. And I'm doing all the things that I know how to do to fix.
What did it feel like to slowly transition into meltdown phase? What were you like? Because I think a lot of people miss it. I think that you're conscious when it's happening now, and that's because you've done a lot of work to become conscious of
It's
when
true.
that's happening. So what does it feel like to slowly transition into meltdown phase?
It's got to be a simple fix. It's got to be a simple fix.
Talking yourself out of gaslighting.
Yeah, there's just a box. There's just a box somewhere that didn't get clicked. It's got to be a simple thing. And then as I'm going through all those checkpoints and none of those things are helping, now things are starting to fall apart. And I can just feel the little like cartoon spring, 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 spring kind of happening. The little gears are shooting out my head and smoke is starting to fizzle into the air.
And how does it
the
feel?
Nostrils
How does it feel
are getting
in the body?
flared.
How does it feel in the body?
It feels like anger and frustration and a little bit of panic.
Right, but what does it feel like? Like physically, what did it feel like?
It feels like getting very hot.
Yeah.
Like throughout my body, like I'm feeling like
you flush.
Steam is being generated and is now being exuded from my body. I am feeling all the things that make one sweaty is starting to happen, and I am now starting to sweat. And the other portion of this was knowing that either today or in a day or so from now, we were going to record this episode. And now I'm starting to think, well, if there's a problem with this, there might be a problem with either us recording or me editing the recording, because how am I supposed to edit a recording that I can't hear through headphones? That makes no sense to me. It's very difficult to pick up on all the subtleties that you don't want in there if you can't hear it through a set of headphones. Right. And you know, I can feel, you know, like almost that feeling that you get when you're over caffeinated, when you're overstimulated.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of feeling in the body, that kind of like jittery, nervous, just not nice feeling. And I'm like, okay. I immediately texted Heather and I'm like, all right, I'm super pissed. I'm in meltdown mode. I need to figure this shit out because all of a sudden Audacity will not let me play anything through headphones and I can't edit that way and rah, 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 rah.
Well, and basically, I mean, it was just such perfect timing because the meme that we posted today was Danielle de Barbarac from Ever After, and it's the Just Breathe. A classic. Yeah. I mean, anyone who loves that movie knows that scene so well. It's been memed 8 bajillion times, but it just seemed fitting. And I sent it to her while
the humor was not lost on us.
Just prior to the meltdown. And she gets this picture glittering on her phone, just breathe. And she's like, I can't breathe.
Like, I can't breathe right now.
Stop telling me what to do.
Shit hitting the fan. Stop telling me what to do.
I'm pouring sweat.
This morning. It was ridiculous. And I did figure it out. It took me about 4 videos to figure out what the combination of issues was. And I was able to fix
solved.
It.
Crisis
Problem
averted.
Solved. Crisis averted. Everything's fine. Here we are recording now.
Right.
But this morning, as I was getting ready to actually do the post, I was, of course, laughing at myself in reference to last night and us having a good chuckle over, hey, look at your timing. This was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then I reminded myself, because I'm like, oh, what kind of music do I want to use? Do I want to use the same music that they used during that scene? And then I had to remind myself of the music that was used during that scene. So I played it for myself and I'm like, Oh, there are layers to this post. Hold on a second, because I forgot that although she's glittering and beautiful and there's, she's had her shit together fairly well up to this point. Now, stuff has gone awry, but she's been able to very neatly package all of her issues in a way that she was able to manage up to this point, and came away with, glittering makeup and these cute little fairy wings and this lovely little dress, and making her grand entrance into the ball where she, dips her head for a moment and has that very iconic just breathe to herself before the shit hits the fan. And I started laughing and I'm like, oh my God, that's right. This is where everything goes to hell in a handbasket for her. Like, really, like within a couple of seconds, just everything bombs. And yet, the cool thing is that on the other end of that, she is able to really shine. She's able to connect with her power and kind of decide, you know, this is unacceptable, the turn that this has taken, and I'm not going to stand for it.
I will
I'm
slit you
I'm
from navel to nose.
I'm going to take care of this business. And what she really doesn't realize is that in the background, she has collected all these allies along the way who are putting things really in place for her to succeed. And it was a really great analogy for what happens with the universe when we are going through periods of shift and transformation and shit hitting the fan. It's we have resources that we can tap into that sometimes we don't even realize are there. And I kind of thought that this would be kind of a neat opportunity to talk about that a little bit and kind of talk about what we do, because I think between the two of us, like, you tend to be a lot better at coming up with a really nice, simple ritual that works well for you that you can do consistently. I tend to not be as great at the simple, consistent things, but I'm a trier
Yeah.
and I like and a collector of different, aspects and ways to do things. And I think it's fun to kind of explore that a little bit.
For me,
And
at a certain point, there came a time where I was just really starting, not even starting, I had sunk myself deeply into the connection with my guides. And they were talking to me loud and clear. And once that connection was forged, the collecting that I had been doing, I just realized as you were speaking. I didn't realize it then. All I knew then was that I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want
mm,
to dabble anymore. I didn't have, and it's not because I don't want to do that. It's that I didn't have any motivation. I didn't have any desire. There was no drive to continue being creative with the rituals and digging into the magic and the tools and collecting things. It didn't inspire me in the same way. And it was almost like someone, it wasn't almost like, it was exactly like someone just flipped a switch. Like all of a sudden it was turned off. And at the time I was like, but can't I have it just a little, because it connects me to kind of a community of people who are doing the same thing. So can't I at least, appreciate that they're doing it? And no, I couldn't even appreciate other people doing it. I just walked into spaces that were filled with crystals and all this, and I was like, why though? What are we doing? And I didn't mean to be judgy about it. I just was trying to navigate that sudden shift within myself and figure out
mhm.
what happened. Like yesterday I was super witchy, and today I'm like, I don't need any of that shit. And I'm like, wow, has your ego run away with you? And I'm like, no, it's not my ego. And I just realized while you were talking, now this happened like 4 years ago, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
kept waiting for it to come back. I was like, maybe I just burned myself out. Maybe I'm just like, I need a break from the crystals and the spells and it's not that I didn't use them at all, but the difference was such a stark contrast. I mean, night and day difference between, oh my gosh, that smells so good, I have to have it for this, and oh my gosh, let's go to the beach and do a ritual, and oh my gosh, all of that Stevie Nicks witch stuff. All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden just fell off a cliff, and it was, I'm going to light a candle and sage myself and talk to my guides. The end. Moving on. you know Clap the hands, the dirt off the hands, and we're done for the day. And I realized while you were talking that I had gotten to a point where my consciousness had shifted in such a way that doing all of that made me, I had to agree to become less conscious so that I could achieve what I was trying to achieve through those making me conscious rituals. Does that make sense? Like I actually had to step back because I had come to a place where I was in constant connection with my guides. They were constantly talking to me, they were constantly giving information. And I didn't realize that that was where I wanted to be. And I had
Mm-hmm.
arrived. And
So
so
like the stuff
every
was more
time,
of a distraction at that point
yeah, it
than
made me
help.
less conscious.
Sure.
And I was like, well, damn, but it was taking up so much of my time. Like, happily, it was such a happy
Mm-hmm.
distraction. And suddenly it was just boop, lights out, gone. You don't need it anymore. And I'm like, what am I going to do with myself now? It left an emptiness. And there you go, transitioning into another time of shift, just like I'm transitioning now.
Yeah.
So,
But that
not a
was but
coincidence.
but that was for your benefit. I mean, even
All
though
shifts are.
all shifts are exactly, and recognizing, because it's like, let's think about, what happened initially. I'm sure you felt a little bit of disassociation. I'm sure you felt a little bit of, well, now I'm kind of alone in a pocket over here, and
Yeah,
how do I
isolation.
connect with any of these people again? I'm isolated, and you know, do I want to spend that much time with just me? Am I okay with that? That's a lot of people go through these things naturally, and I think they end up feeling like guilty, or like they're doing something wrong, or like they um like they didn't give it their best go, and they're like, wussing out or something, when a shift like that comes along, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. You have to follow the path that's correct for you in that moment. And I'm sure it's difficult when you have, like you take the two of us, and you're very simple about it. Not that I can't be simple about it, but I thoroughly enjoy looking into all of the options and seeing if there's anything else that I want to try connecting with. That's just a part of my makeup,
Well,
and the part
that's how
of
you
what I
play.
like to do. That is how I play.
Yeah.
That is my opportunity for play. So, you know, we do that portion a little bit differently, but it's always nice to see, when we have moments where we get stuck, I feel like it's fun for us to kind of come to each other and go, okay, so like, what do you do? And
Mhm.
sometimes you'll give me something that's like a really simple tool,
Mhm.
and I'm like, okay, I'll try that. And sometimes it's like really awesome, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. But that's fine. And
Mhm.
sometimes you do the same thing. It's like, well, what do you do? And I may have something a little more complex than what you would normally do. And you're like, I wouldn't normally do that. And you'll do it. And sometimes it works. And sometimes it's like, nah, I don't want to do that much.
Mhm.
But you'll come up with your own thing out of that. And it's nice
Sure.
to have that kind of back and forth where you're like, well, this is what I do, but I don't know if it's going to work for you, and it's going to be really different, but maybe you need something different today. You never know. And it's nice to explore those things.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is a fun time to kind of dip your toes in the water of, if you've had something that's worked for you for a long time, but it's not working anymore, it's like, well, go out and play with something different. So if you're a person that normally has to have, kind of like a big to do, a big ritual, or especially right now, because so many people, I think, feel like, oh, it's spooky season. Like I need to be fully immersed in it. I need to like be dripping from head to toe in orange and black. And I want to do all the spooky things. But you really have to be mindful of your own energy and where you're at right now. And if your energy is telling you pull back a little bit, sometimes it's hard to do that when your mind is like, but I want to have fun with everybody else. And that means that I'm not going to have fun. That's not what that means. It
Mhm.
just means watch your own energy and try to figure out, edit your schedule a little bit, edit your thinking of what it means to be involved. And, maybe your version of being spooky this year is spending more time at home watching spooky things on Netflix and, inviting someone over for, popcorn and just chilling on the couch instead of I'm going to go to, all the haunts and be out all night and feel like crap the next morning.
Something interesting is coming through.
Okay.
So, what I'm hearing is that before we work to become conscious on our own, the way we are made conscious is through contrast, right?
Sure.
So, if we are experiencing something and we're just going along and we get trapped in a cycle or trapped in the routine or comfortable, even, you can think of it as just being comfortable. Life will bring you something, and by life I mean it's actually you bringing it to you. It's your higher self
Mhm.
coming through and saying, okay, you're getting too comfortable, you're supposed to be growing. And so here's this thing that's going to wake you up, and it's going to be, anything from a tower moment where everything falls apart to, cold water slapped in your face
Mhm.
and very bracing, and you're like, oh, why? Why? I was so cozy, I was so comfortable. Now, what we're stepping into as we become conscious of what we want, what we need, what we deserve, what we desire, is we are being faced with a choice to when we get stuck and are longing for some sort of change or momentum, or maybe we're not even conscious enough to realize that it's change that we want, because change is scary. And so there's still that buildup of resistance to it. Perhaps it's just, I don't know what I want, but this isn't working.
Mhm.
When you get to that point, try stepping into contrast. And what I mean by stepping into contrast is when you get to the point where you feel like your life is stagnant, think of what you usually do and then step into the energy by doing the opposite.
Yeah. Give it a
Because
try.
yeah, if you are someone who likes to do all the things all the time, go, 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 try stepping into the energy of someone who becomes the hermit and stays home and
Eh.
figure out what being alone looks like, or figure out what being cozy looks like. What does that sound like to you? What does that feel like to you? For some people who are used to spending, night after night in a nightclub or going to the theater all the time or being out even at a shopping mall, for them, being around a lot of energy all the time is normal. So cozy for them might be a small gathering at home with 3 people.
It might feel like abandonment at first.
Well, it's going to feel uncomfortable because it's unusual. You
Mhm.
don't yet have the tools to, if you don't have the tools to figure out what cozy looks like for you and you have to think about that, then it's very possible that doing the work to figure out what that means to you is going to be uncomfortable because you don't even yet have the tools to know what that means.
It's
And
like
we're
that is
very
exactly your next mission.
Yeah, and we're very uncomfortable when we don't know what something means. We feel like we are at the mercy of fate, this punishing, possibly punishing force. It could reward you or it could punish you, and it's this crapshoot. And who wants to be in that position? No one. I don't. I've been in that position for weeks now and I haven't wanted to be in it. But my guides are with me and they kept telling me, you know, you need to do this. That's why you felt the excitement when you first, when opportunity arose, you were excited right off the bat. And I couldn't deny it, but I certainly didn't
Yeah.
want it. I didn't want it.
Well, and again, let's reiterate, Heather is kind of facing the opposite right now, where she has been very comfortable in her hermitness
Mm-hmm. I
and
am a
is
very
now
good hermit.
venturing out into the world and being
So
around
much out into the
people
world. So much
and
out.
being on center stage, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, and putting yourself out there. And how's that going so far?
Really well, but it's exhausting. It's requiring things of me that I haven't, they're tarnished, these aspects of myself. Ooh, I may
Sure.
cry. Ooh, that touched something deep, man. They've been unused since friggin' high school, you know?
Right.
Um, I think really high school was the beginning of the manifestation of the decline. The actual decline
Hmm.
started in seventh grade. I can pinpoint it, and I've pinpointed it in other episodes. And then the manifestation of that actual decline happened in high school,
Mm.
where I went from center stage in the theater to background player.
Hmm.
And that compounded the stories that caused me to think I'm not good enough to be center stage. This opportunity that I have stumbled upon now is calling me to center stage. I am. It's a one woman show. I don't have a choice but to be center stage. And it is constant interacting with what so far has been very lovely people. But, you know, it also was being thrown into the deep end. It was a large crowd for me, considering that I've been a hermit for this long and I've had the opportunity to really choose who and when I interact with people. And now I'm still choosing, but it is against my conscious will to be out there this much. But it is so necessary for me because I don't stand a chance of growing and evolving. And I don't stand a chance of growing and evolving any of my other ventures without polishing up those tools that are still within me, but I don't have a conscious, clear connection to anymore.
So, have you felt like, or have you even explored yet what energy management looks for you right now and how that may be shifting for you since it's such a contrasting situation to what you've been in before?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm constantly, even while I'm doing my thing in the moment, I'm constantly checking in with my energy and seeing what am I picking up? What am I putting out? What am I doing with all of this? And it's going to be a work in progress because I haven't been in this position before.
So are you finding anything that is helping you to manage like any kind of like overwhelm in the moment? Are you finding yourself in moments of overwhelm right now while you're kind of
The
out
moments
there and
the moments of overwhelm come when I have a moment of silence for my thinking mind.
mhm.
That's where the trouble comes in. It's only the moments of the thinking mind that cause overwhelm. While I am in the moment, as long as I'm staying in the moment, and this is not revelatory for anyone listening, when you are in the moment, you're fine. That moment has you
Mhm.
cradled. And all you have to do is be passed from cradling hands to cradling hands to cradling hands by staying in that moment. The second I start to think or worry or wonder if I'm doing well, if I'm doing it right, if I'm keeping my time management correct, if I'm any of those organizational administrative
Mhm.
duties will kick me over into my thinking brain. And as soon as I'm kicked over into my thinking brain, I lose all connection with everything else and everything comes to a grinding halt.
Got it. So the trick is for you right now really just to stay in that moment as much as possible and not allow the thinking mind to take over.
Yeah,
Not to
fucking
worry about,
surrender.
yeah, not worry too much about what's coming next, but realizing that right in this space at this moment, you're fine.
Hmm.
Everybody's with you, you're fully supported. And it's true. That is usually where we will stub our toe in these types of shifts and moments of growth is when we are not allowing ourselves the space to just be supported by the moment. You have to allow it.
Hmm.
And I can raise my hand and say that I am probably one of the, at least initially, I was one of the worst people in this regards, as far as not just allowing myself to be with whatever it is. Again, I've said multiple times before that I tend to be a fix it type personality. I want to immediately jump in and fix it, because I will generally see things like that as a, oh, there's something wrong. And most of the time there is nothing wrong. Nothing's wrong. Nothing has actually happened. You are
Right.
not being chased by a lion. You are, a crowd of angry people with pitchforks is not coming after you. You're not about ready to be, beheaded. You're fine. And she's laughing, and I bring these things up because it's also not lost on me that through doing things like regression, I have realized that I have actually faced a lot of these situations in my previous lifetimes. And it's always funny to me that when I'm observing it, it's very like, I'm sitting there like eating popcorn, watching the movie, going, wow, cereal? Like, that's crazy. But I've been through it enough times now to where I'm not affected by it, because I realize, well, your soul's still here. You're still carrying on. You're still experiencing things. You're fine. You were fine
Okay,
then.
so question for you. So when you first started going through it, because now you say you've been through it enough times to where it doesn't affect you,
Hmm.
how did it affect you when you first started experiencing your past life memories?
I'm trying to think of how many times I've done this now. I think more times than we can count. I don't recall. But I want to say maybe the first 3 sessions that we had, it was such a crazy feeling to be actually faced with those things and feeling it, because I really felt it. Like I was going through all of the things that the me in that moment went through. So I could feel the pain or the sadness or the anger or the frustration of that portion of me. Um, and I think the reason why it was so profound and seemed so heavy is because I probably hadn't experienced it, like truly allowed the feelings of that, whatever that was, to sink in, either in the moment or in times afterwards when those lessons came back around, maybe in a slightly different way. But, when I was showed that again, I would kind of go into autopilot and, snap into, well, let's go into just getting through it mode. Let's just soldier on. Let's just get through it. Even if it was, being hung or in the guillotine, it was like, well, this is a thing that's happening.
Disassociate and
Let's
let it
just
happen.
disassociate and let it happen.
Right.
But there was something that happened within that space of disassociation that kind of would carry on into future lifetimes until I had the opportunity to go, wait, let's just feel it.
Right.
Let it happen.
And that really is
And
like you can't get away from it. You can't get away from it. And that's why something like journeying or past life regression is so valuable, because what's happened, and again, we've said this in other episodes, but it's going to keep coming up because it's the work that we're all expected to do. We're all expecting it of ourselves, and we're all doing it for each other. And the truth of the matter is that we're bringing in all of these crumbs that are packed in suitcases with us into this particular part of the timeline, into this life that we're living that happens in this part of this timeline, because the energy is asking you to release those crumbs. And a lot of the crumbs, you've done so much work to release what those crumbs were attached to, but you haven't yet released the crumbs. And those crumbs happened when the traumatic times happened in those past lives, and you disassociated in order to get through it. You have to come back down here and experience it in the body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
experiencing it in the body is no fun. It's not fun, but we can't disconnect. We came down here for a holistic experience, meaning that our spirit and the experiences that our spirit has also need to pass through the filter of the body. Just like the light that we are, we're white light when we're unified. We come into these bodies. The bodies act like prisms. They divide our light, which is why the rainbows are the chakras are represented as rainbow colors. And all of it has to pass through the filter of the body in order to come back out and unify once more. If it doesn't pass through the filter of the body, then you are missing bits and pieces of understanding that you came down here to get.
You're not fully integrated.
Right.
And that's, it sucks because your first inclination is always going to be run. Run, don't do it. Like, opposite direction, full speed ahead.
It's a trap.
Let's bolt. Abort. And yet you will always find that the more you do that, the more those things are just going to keep happening. You're going to be like, what the hell? Like, I just went through something crazy like that. Why am I going through it again? And it's like, well, were you super reactive in that moment and wouldn't actually allow that thing to like happen and really take place? Or, or were you able to sit with it, observe it, be a little less reactionary, and just kind of see it from a perspective of what can I learn about myself here? Or what can I learn about others here? Or do I have space in my heart right now to just send love to that thing and not see it so much as an enemy?
None of those formulations will ever work for me. And the reason is because they're too in the thinking mind. I think that when you are faced with abject fear and terror and PTSD type reactions, the only thing you need to do is, can I cry about this right now?
That's good.
Can I let myself cry? Because, you're not trying to think through it. You're not trying to learn from it. You're trying to release it. And those are two very different energies. And I would much rather release and then think, because if I try to think and then release, it's not going to happen. So
That's
when
fair.
I'm feeling terror, I cry. And if I don't think I can cry, or I'm too wound up, I'm too tightly wound to cry, I will put in a movie that makes me cry. Boy, did I do that the other night. I mean, there are some movies out there that I think, in my normal punky sort of razor's edge pocket that I like to sit in, I would never admit to watching these movies. But I know that if I put in certain movies, I will freaking lose my heart. Like, I will just bleed out on my bed like a blithering mess. And I put in the other night, I can't believe I'm admitting this to people, I watched Hope Floats.
Even I am surprised at that one.
I love that movie for when I am feeling like I know that, here's the thing, and I'm going to cry just by saying it. When Mae Whitman, that little girl, wants her daddy to take her away and he drives off without her, Her tears were so real that it cuts straight through my punk aspects and goes right to my inner child. It
And
rips
Mushy
my
Gushy
heart
over
out.
here has never seen that movie. I've never watched Hope Floats.
Well, I don't know if it'll work for you like it worked for me, but Mae Whitman was a superstar at the very tender age of whatever very tender age she was at. And of course, I love Sandra Bullock, and Harry Connick was cute, whatever. I mean, romantic movie, whatever. That part is all well and good. The point is that that movie deals with some very heavy themes that have been in my life, and it deals with them in the South, which is also my life. So watching that movie has all of the perfect triggers for connecting with my inner child, which is what this has all been about. Those are the tarnished parts of me. Those are the
Sure.
parts that I'm polishing up. Those are the parts that I'm re-embracing. Those are the parts that I'm reintegrating, that I had to set aside in order to keep myself safe from what was happening to her back in 7th grade. So that movie went in, and I literally didn't know if I would recover. I had no idea it would be that poignant for me this time. Usually it's just like, and then the movie's over and there's a happy ending, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm all right. No, I was not all right after that movie. I cried the entire night. Like, there was no respite after that movie was over. And I was like, wow, I need to really think hard about this the next time I put that movie in. Oh my gosh, I might not recover. Am I going to be in one piece tomorrow? Like, oh my gosh, I was completely worn out.
See, and I will tend to be really emotional in the moment, but I don't always connect with that emotion fully in the body. So I kind of have to like move myself through a couple of things before I get to that point.
What
And
does
a
that
lot of
mean?
times that looks
Wh-
like that will look like things like doing a salt bath, like having some sort of physical activity where I really do have to stop whatever I'm doing, go do something else, shift a little bit into not thinking so much and just truly feeling into the moment of relaxation. So salt
So
baths are, go ahead.
you have to physically, you have to undertake some physical rituals in order to get yourself into the
Yes.
moment of a physical space.
Yes, and connect with that emotion. Like the emotion will fly. That I have no problem with. It's not like I sit there and I can't cry or I can't, I can't
Right, but
connect
it's
in the,
unconscious.
but it's not, yeah, but well, it's conscious, but it's not felt in the physical body
Mm,
necessarily.
mhm, mhm.
Like I don't always allow my heart space to open up enough to envelop that, or allow my body a moment of rest enough to take it in fully
Mhm.
and be able to process that emotion physically. So something like a salt bath, which is amazing because that salt is also helping us to ground our energy. It's great for relaxing our muscles and
Pulling out
um,
toxins.
pulling out toxins, all of those things. And, generally they say you want to give yourself at least 20 minutes. I don't generally will give myself 20 minutes to do anything.
True.
It's really hard for me to, even though I'm not, like, I would not consider myself a wildly active, physically active person, but I am a fidgety person and I have a hard time. This is when my Gemini comes out, okay? If you haven't realized already, Heather and I are both Geminis, but we're either exactly alike in some aspects or we are wildly opposite of each other, which is
Mhm.
perfect. Um, and I am one of those Geminis who really does need those moments of, okay, we're going to have some real self time, some real like down time. And if the pattern has been, because I don't always do that, if I haven't taken the time to do that, I'll get sick. Like my body will just full on, hey,
They'll lay you
checking
out.
in. There's been no maintenance here. You haven't done your oil change, or like, you got to think of it sometimes like you would your car. We're really usually good about those types of maintenance moments, but we're not always really great about taking care of ourselves in that way. And something like a salt bath, and today was actually fun. I picked up yesterday at the Target. I don't know how many people are familiar with the Dr. Teal's line of products. Dr. Teal does a lot of Epsom salt based, like either bath salts or like foaming baths that are Epsom salt based.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a little on the pricey side for what they are, but they are a great self-care moment that's still pretty inexpensive and simple to get a hold of and easy to do. And it was funny because I had noticed this time when I was looking at the options for the different, types that they had, that there was an option for a uh, cannabis sativa hemp oil bath salt from Dr. Teal's.
Man, nothing can compare to that shit you whip up in your kitchen. I'm just saying.
I know, and I was about to get into that. It's like now I do make my own because I am very kitchen witchy, garden witchy in that way.
She's everything witchy. Don't be fooled.
But I do love myself some plant medicine, and it's funny because every time you say the word plant medicine these days, I think people will automatically go to, oh,
so have you done ayahuasca?
You're doing you're doing ayahuasca or some mushroom medicine, or you're a pothead, or which there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but plant medicine really does incorporate, if you're drinking herbal tea, you're using plant medicine. If you're using, if you're going out in your garden or essential oils and things like that, you're using plant medicine. Anything that's plant based. If you're vegan, you're using plant medicine. It's really nice to connect with nature in that way, especially when you don't always get the opportunity to go physically out into nature. But yeah, I do love making myself, and it was funny because I always feel like I start making these concoctions in my own kitchen, and then a couple months later, I'll see them show up on a shelf somewhere, and I'm like, trendsetter. See, I was cool before the rest of y'all. But I thought it was funny that they were offering this now, so I wanted to try it. So I actually did that this morning before we started recording. I'm like, I'm going to go take my bath salts and I'm going to go have myself a soak. And it's not bad. It was actually pretty good. The hemp oils, which a lot of what you're seeing in the products that are coming out now are CBD, which you're not going to have any type of psychoactive effects from the cannabis when you're using CBD. You're just taking the cannabidiol, which are something that's also found naturally in our bodies, but you're enhancing those, and those help with things like muscle relaxation. And a lot of people who have either stomach issues or going through something like cancer really lean on the healing effects of that for things like nausea and just any type of pain reduction. It helps with reducing inflammation and things like that. So it's incredibly beneficial for you. And I happen to take I will go out and actually purchase cannabis flower that has been bred specifically to be CBD only. And I will make my own salves and tinctures and oils. And I have found that if I take, after I strain all of the fun stuff out, and I'm left basically with the leaves and the herbs and the mixture of oils that's left over once you strain it all, I will normally throw that into a bag of Epsom salt. And that shit is the bomb. It is so awesome. It's like, oh, yeah, I can relax. Like just everything, every little bit of tension just melts. And I freaking love that. But I also think that it's really nice that if you're, if you can't get a hold of all of that stuff and you don't have the energy to sit in your kitchen and whip that up and wait for that to happen, that you can go to Target and pick up a bag of freaking Dr. Teal's and have yourself a moment for like $6.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That's a low investment of your time, not a huge investment out of your bank account, and is still giving you some nice healing properties. And while we're talking about this specifically, I also wanted to give a shout out to our friends, the Canna Queens and the Canna Queens podcast. Our friends Ari and Kirsten. I've known Ari for about, God, like 7 years now. She's awesome, but they are really great about taking a fun approach to anything cannabis related. So if that is something that interests you and you want to know more and have fun while you're learning, that is a really fun podcast to check out. So go and check them out, and you can find them on all the same platforms you find us on. But yeah, like that's another one of those tools that I use to help me get more in touch with, just the physicality of it, that's the part that I have a hard time with. It's like, you need to really sit with the emotional part. I get the emotional part without getting the emotional part connected to the physical part.
Well, interestingly, here's how it usually works for me. Usually I feel it in my body. I go, oh, that's not good. And then I start to feel the emotions. So it's in the right order generally. So it was difficult as you started talking about this a few episodes ago for me to really relate until I started the process of, well, the way I want to say it is coming out again, but getting prepared for this new venture of mine. I realized that, how do I say this? I realized actually as I was walking to the location that I was trying to feel emotion so that I could heal the emotion. I did not mean for that to sound like preacher language, but it is what it is. But I was trying, that was the usual thing. Like you feel it in the body and then you connect with the emotion because your body is telling you there's an emotion. And every time I'd feel the panic and anxiety in my body, there was no other message. There was no other emotion. There was no reason to cry it out. There was no message that was being sent. That's when I realized that it was solely stuff trapped in the body that was being released. That what I was going through was not triggering an emotional reaction. It was triggering physical trauma that was still trapped in my body.
Yeah, you'd done the emotional side of the work, but you hadn't done the physical release portion of it. And that's where I find myself a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it sounds weird to people sometimes because they're like, well, Jesus, I cry at everything. Or, or like, I don't get what you're talking about. And it's true as it is in most things of this nature. Until you experience it and it clicks, you're just not going to know. But we like to share it so that you have some point of reference. If you haven't gone through that, when it does happen, you're like, oh, they were talking about that.
Right. You're not losing your mind. It's actually happening.
I'm not crazy. It's a thing that actually happens. That is a thing.
That is a thing.
So it's cool for me to be able to relate that to people, even when in the moment it might not feel incredibly relatable, because I know at some point in time you're going to come across something that strikes you like that, and it's gonna, it's just gonna pluck that correct chord.
Yeah.
And you're gonna know in that moment, oh wow, that's what I'm experiencing.
And usually that at that point you have gotten to some very deep wounds. The last time that happened to me was on the 10-year anniversary of my mom's death. I had been basically unaware that every year in July, a march to her death would start for me physically. I could see it manifest out in my external world, but I was under the impression that what I was watching manifest was making me feel a certain way. And I didn't understand that what I was experiencing, I had already experienced in my body. I was just too disconnected to realize it. And
Yeah.
so 10 years after she died, it culminated in a freaking horrible, horrible few months of experience. I felt jettisoned by all my friends. I felt completely abandoned. I felt completely unsupported. I felt unheard. I felt unseen. And this all manifested not just as, hey, my friends have dropped off the face of the earth because they're all busy. That's kind of an obvious one. It manifested in, hey, you have to actually leave your house and go stay at a hotel at the hottest time of the year in order to have the house tented for termites. And I know
Yeah.
you're asking, how does that tie in? Well, my house is the same house that I've lived in my entire life. It holds my family energy, and it's all I have left of my family. And my brain processed the idea of termites as threatening that
Mm-hmm.
family bubble. And I didn't even realize at the time that when I was having the house tented was basically right around the anniversary of her death. I don't keep track of birthdays or anniversaries or things like that. It's just never been something that I've been good at. Or I guess in truth cared to do. I don't care. But I keep a kind of, loosey goosey sort of approach to it where I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, around this time, such and such a thing happened. But I was so preoccupied with the terror of termites and tenting, and having to spend such a great amount of money to have the house tented. That's not a cheap fix. And on top of that, having to move for a couple days into a hotel, which for some people they'd approach it like, woohoo, I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to take myself to the beach. I did not do that. I got a hotel that was basically in the parking lot of a mall. I mean, I probably stayed at the friggin' crappiest place I could have possibly chosen to stay at. And to this day, when I look back on it, I'm like, why though? Why did you do it like that? Why didn't you just make it a happy occasion? It's because I wasn't happy. I couldn't hope to connect to happy. And I realized right before I was getting ready to leave the hotel room to go basically back to the house because the tent was coming off. I realized in that moment that what I had been experiencing mimicked in energy, but not visually or experientially, the same march up to my mother's death. Because in July, that's when she decided she didn't want to do treatment anymore. And that's when she decided she wanted to do hospice. And everybody kind of has this template view of what hospice is like, where, oh, the person is quietly going to their rest and, there's a nurse there to help you through it. So at least you've got that support. Well, hospice didn't go that way for us. It was horrible. And I ended up having to fire the hospice nurse who sucked and rush my mom to the hospital because she was having great pain and she was violently throwing up. And they don't do IV in house at hospice. So the medications she was on for pain were making her stomach very, very violently ill. But oh gosh, this is so depressing. I'm sorry, guys. But the truth is that the cancer had swollen up all of her face and her throat. She was barely able to swallow. And so it was a nightmare. It was a freaking nightmare. So the whole time through that experience, I was the gatekeeper. I was the guardian. I was the caretaker. I was the everything. And I had some support. It's not true to say I didn't have support. I couldn't connect to the feeling of being supported because I had so much weight on my shoulders that I couldn't risk being vulnerable for even a moment because I didn't know if I would be able to put myself back together.
Yeah.
And that's the last time this happened to me. And of course, what I'm going through now is nothing. It's nowhere near that catastrophe level. It's not even close. But the physical reaction in my body says it is, because the me that's coming up is a baby. She was a little girl. She was a child who felt all of those things, who felt unsupported, who felt unseen, who felt like she had to diminish her voice in order to stay safe, because if she was on the radar, they would get her. That's what she felt like. And that's what's been coming up for me during this process. And
that's a hard one.
It's never not going to suck. Sorry. Yeah. And you're never going to be able to avoid it. You may be able to avoid it for some time, but you won't be able to avoid it forever. You're not meant to avoid it for forever. It's not healthy to avoid it forever. And the message that came through, really, like, for once, my guides were brief with a message. I was expecting to write one sentence and then have a whole flood come through. And they were like, we realize you can't handle a lot right now. So let us just say the link to greater joy is found through your fear. The end. And I was like, are you sure? They're like, no, we're good. Just sit with that. And what they were showing me was that in order to hold joy for a longer time and connect more deeply to that joy, because everybody thinks that joy comes in I'm trying to sort of convey the visuals they're giving me in my head. We think of having joy. First of all, we equate joy to happiness. They're not the same thing. Happiness is meant to be momentary. Happiness is fleeting. It's meant to be fleeting. It comes and goes. Happiness is a tool of contrast to show you what you're experiencing and where you're at. Joy is something that comes from within you. It is constantly there, and it's a question of whether or not you are connecting with it. So stop thinking of joy as a gift the universe gives you in a package. That is, in that package means it's finite. And start thinking of joy as a vibration that you hold deep within your soul, that all of these things that you're afraid to experience emotionally are blocking you from tuning into.
Absolutely, 1000%.
That was amazing. Who said that?
Right?
Who said that? That was someone else, because I didn't have all of that until they're like, just say it on the show and we got you. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. Can we just switch to this instead of me having to write pages and pages of download? Can we just switch to just say it on the show? That's I like that.
And you know what? That's what happens in Shift. That was another thing that I wanted to bring up, as be aware that as you go through seasons like this, that for those of you who are actually connected with the gifts that you hold, that is also a huge part of the process, is allowing those gifts to grow in ways that are very unexpected. And sometimes that means that, like, your ways of receiving information get really succinct or different. Mm-hmm. If you're used to getting something really brief, now maybe it shifts to something more expansive so that you're getting a little more, or you're seeing different layers of how that works. Mm-hmm. And if you're used to getting something that's, really expansive, maybe they shorten that up for you and let you say, look, it doesn't always have to be this. It doesn't always have to mean this. Sometimes it just means boom, in the moment it comes to you because you're allowing it to come in that way. You're allowing yourself to receive in that way.
And part of the evolution of your gifts as well, something that you need to pay attention to is, are you identifying too heavily with a story you've created of how your gifts will look once they manifest? Because I can tell you, nothing will stop you from manifesting your gifts quicker than a story about how they're supposed to look. And I know that there are some of our listeners out there right now nodding their heads who are going through this, because I've spoken to you. I see you.
Yeah.
But the point is that, when people, especially when people are first starting out, but it happens with people who've been on the path a long time too, they start to identify as how they receive their information.
Mm-hmm.
And once that happens, your ego grabs onto, it must appear this way because this is how the ego works. But the truth of the matter is that you're not meant to work one way for your entire life. There might be overarching themes, but within that, you as a human being are meant to evolve. You have to stop thinking of, I'm going to get a gift from my guides like a birthday present. I'm going to unwrap that box and therein lies the gift. That's not what it
Yeah.
looks like. Everything is wavelength. Everything is liquid. Everything is flowing. And the more you can step into flowing like that, instead of being a sentinel awaiting a parcel, you become this wavelength. And that wavelength is going to shift because that's the nature of wavelengths. That's the
Yeah.
nature of energy. That's the nature of frequency. That's the nature of vibration, which is when you start stepping into this spiritual realm, all you're experiencing, every emotion you are experiencing is a wavelength. Everything is meant to ebb and flow. Why would your gifts stay the same? Now, there are certain aspects of your soul that are tuned in to receiving certain things in certain ways. That's okay. But, like, for instance, was it the beginning of this year or the beginning of last year? I can't remember because time is stupid. But at the beginning of the year, my guides gave me a message that said, hey, you need to start writing down our downloads. And I was like, that's a pain in the butt. I don't really want to. And they're like, but we insist. And I'm like, but I don't even have a notebook. They're like, go get a notebook. I'm like, but I don't want to go outside and get a notebook. And they're like, order a notebook. And I was like, but none of them are pretty. I mean, I really am a brat
All
to
the
my guy.
excuses.
I mean, if there's an excuse, I will find it in it. And I know consciously at the time it's a lame excuse, but it really is just my way of saying that sounds lame and I don't want to do it. And I'm openly a brat with my guides. I don't treat them like the church teaches you to treat God. You know, there's no reverence. I'm not on my knees. I'm not praying. I am being just as much of a brat to them as I am to you, because that is my authentic self. I am a brat. Anyway, I did end up, because they wouldn't shut up, getting notebooks. And I have faithfully written down every single download since then. Maybe I missed a couple that I didn't, because sometimes I don't realize they're downloads. Sometimes I just think it's me thinking. And, but for the most part, I've written down every download. And that, the reason for that is not so I could remember them, because up until that point, I was like, okay, if this is important, you'll bring it back to me when I need it. And they always did, which is part
Mhm.
of the reason I thought, why do I have to write this down? You bring it back to me anyway. And they're like, you have to write it down. So the reason I had to write it down was so that I could then start to really see the work that I was doing, the
Mhm.
information that I was receiving, so that I could start to become more conscious and more aware of the depth of information I was receiving, so I could start to appreciate that they're not just telling me this for me, they're telling me this so I can tell you. And if I hadn't started writing it down, I don't think I would have truly grasped the gravity of how much has come through.
Well, and furthermore, I would say that that's also an accomplishment. And you were probably not used to seeing it in that way.
Right.
But if you can see it physically, look at all of this stuff that, like, this is real
Mhm.
work that I've been doing
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
And if you can physically see that in front of you, hey, this is an accomplishment. You're not doing anything. You're doing
Right,
something.
right,
And here it
right.
is in the physical form. In the
And by
physical
the way,
form.
a quick note, possibly quick note. We just started a Patreon, and we are starting to figure out what we want to offer you, what would be beneficial to you, what
Mhm.
would be possible for us to maintain. And one of the ideas that I have is converting my very large collection of spiritual downloads into a readable version for Patreon members. So if that's something you'd like to see on our Patreon, let us know. You can email us, you can um, catch us on Instagram and
Mhm.
comment. Any other ways?
Comment,
Do we have any other
DM,
ways?
You can catch us on our link tree, and that'll send you to various ways that you can get a hold of us if you don't do the Instagram thing, or you can just go
Right.
directly to Patreon. And I think
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
button and it'll
You
just
can
be
comment. Yeah.
Patreon / using your inside voice, or
Yeah.
/ I think, using your
All
inside voice.
right.
However it is that works.
There's a link in our link tree.
There is a link in the link tree. That's
We'll
probably the
figure it out.
easiest way to do it.
We'll figure out a way to get you there.
Or just using our, why do I just keep saying your?
I
It's
don't know. I do it
using
too.
our inside voice at gmail.com. Everybody does email, so you can catch us that way. Or, again, if you follow us on Instagram, it's super easy. You can either click the email button and it will open up an email for you, or
Yeah.
you can click that link in the bio, which is our link tree, which will give you the links to all the things. Again, pretty easy.
Yeah.
Or if you're already fluent in Patreon, you can do the patreon.com/using our inside voice. All one word.
We know the name of our show.
We do. Well, it's one of those things we really love anytime we have the ability to take something that's familiar and put our own twist on it that is still familiar and yet slightly campy. We will go for that in a hot second, because that's what we like. So, using something familiar, like using your inside voice. The problem is it's super familiar to use that term. So we catch ourselves doing it all the time. But
Stop putting it in my head.
Yeah. Using our inside voice, as in you and I. Yeah, that's so that's a fun new venture for us that kind of grew out of transitioning over to Zencastr as a hosting platform, which we are still doing. Still kind of in the middle of. The whole process will take a couple weeks. So, if you're still listening on Podbean, you won't see new episodes showing up there, but you will be able to access the episodes still through other platforms through Podbean, and you'll still be able to see our webpage for the time being. But anything that was on the webpage or the insights page is being transitioned over into Patreon, and Heather's already started that process. So thank you.
Well, because our goal is to really open up a space for community to grow.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have too many communities. I don't think you can have too many characters. I don't think you can have too many influences or flavors. And I'm really excited about opening up a community with the flavor of using our inside voice, with humor, with a play forward thinking. Because I think a lot of spiritual groups are amazing and great, but I don't know any of them that focus on the energy of how to play with this process. It's all very serious, or it's very woo woo, or it's they have a slant, and that works for them. And it's a great flavor to add to your diet, but really here it's about playfulness. It's about learning and remembering to stay playful, even when you are being asked to do something that is terrifying. Whatever you're facing that is terrifying, know that. And I know it's really hard to keep believing this when you feel consistently challenged and threatened. But know that whatever you're being asked to go through, while you do not have to enjoy it, it is a higher version of you who has decided to play with that energy. The higher self doesn't take this life thing anywhere near as seriously as we do. And it's easy for the higher self who's not embodied going through whatever the trials and tribulations may be, if it's physical pain, if it's emotional pain, if it's any kind of trauma, the higher self is like, oh, wow, look at that. Look at what happens when, it feels like I'm being watched in a Nat Geo special.
It's like a
Watch
morbid
Heather
curiosity.
Watch Heather in her natural habitat as she goes through PTSD. Let's see what happens. And it feels like a cruel joke at times, but it really is. I honestly believe it's a joke we are playing on ourselves. And I try to keep a balance between, yes, what I'm going through is very real to me and it is horrifying and I don't want to do it. And fuck you. And also knowing that there's another aspect of me that's a much larger aspect who has sunk many different tendrils of energy into many points in this timeline to see what it's all about. Let's see what it looks like, And that's exactly, as I'm thinking of it, that's exactly what the process I've been going through for the past few weeks was. There was
Mm-hmm.
a certain higher self, which was actually my inner child, but there was a energy that said, ooh, that looks like fun. You want to do that. And I was like, yay, let's go do. Wait, what? No, I don't
You
want to.
sign
No, I don't want to do that. I
you
don't,
sign me up for what?
I
Who
don't,
said?
I have to report where, I have to be where, when, I have to do what? You mean I have to walk? I, what? I didn't sign up for walking. Literally signed up for walking. And so these battling aspects appeared almost instantly. Almost instantly. Like my joy of wanting to do this was embattled within Jamie is losing her shit. What's happening?
Because
What are you laughing about?
all I can hear is vertical running, no vertical running in my head. Rebel Wilson from Pitch Perfect going, no, don't sign me up for that. I'm
Yes,
not doing that.
right.
I'm not
No,
doing that.
I didn't sign up for cardio. So yeah, the challenge
Oh,
happened almost immediately. The joy, the joy and inspiration that sparked this adventure had to take a back seat to all of my ego's fears and horror stories. And believe me, as I experienced the process, there were so many stories. There were stories about everything. Stories about my car's not going to work. Stories about I'm going to get stuck in traffic and I'm going to be late. Stories about I'm going to fall on my face and fail. Stories about name it. And I had a story pop up about it in the days leading up to my first time working. And the first time working was exactly what the guide said it would be. I was completely cradled and supported by a beautiful group of humans who were there to have a good time.
mm-hmm.
And the part of me that was there to have a good time with them, who found it exciting, stepped forward. And the part of me that had been telling all the stories about how horrible it could be stepped back. There was that switch. And all the words started falling out of my face. And I was able to take in the experience of people's changing facial expressions, their beautiful sense of humor about things, their sense of wonderment, their gasps of surprise. And each time it happened, it was like a little gift that was coming to me as a reward for what I had
Dude,
stepped into. Why did you have to cry? I was doing fine.
dude, I freaking felt that because that's something that we've had a hard time with for a very, very, very long time because we are
Mm-hmm.
so used to being in a position where even though we are putting ourselves out there in some way, either through what we create or through some form of art, or like we're doing this, it is still very difficult when you're engaging in something where you're putting yourself out there but you're not necessarily receiving anything in return that is like immediate and tangible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for the podcast, you kind of see it through in a very technical way through analytics, which is not really giving you anything, let's be honest.
No, that's nothing of substance.
That's nothing of substance. That's
That is
not.
the hardtack of substance.
Yeah, that's, that's the bare minimum, and
Mhm.
it really doesn't. It's really not fulfilling. But
No.
we spent a long time in the earlier projects that we did together, just being in a space where you kind of had to resign yourself to knowing that you were probably not going to get any accolades or immediate feedback on your contributions that wasn't heavily distorted.
Mhm.
And this is a beautiful way. I'm so happy for you. This is a beautiful way of getting that instant connection, that
Mhm.
instant knowing that people are connecting with you, that you're enjoying that space together, that you're in that same frequency together, that you're riding that wave together.
Mhm.
And that's something that I think all of us need to experience more of in whatever ways we can find it. And that might be in person, or it might be through, something like a community chat where you're all
Mhm.
real time talking to each other and able to get something out of it, or even like, some sort of video conferencing where you can see faces, or at least um hear other voices, or see messages being typed in real time. And if I think about like other things that I'm involved in, um like we were talking about how easy it is for me to connect with certain aspects of like connecting with my guides and feeling really like at one with all of the things that I am able to connect with and bring into a space when I'm doing in-person sound baths. And that is exactly what that is doing. That like next level of really feeling good is being able to connect with the other energy in that room and feel that, hey, people are relaxed right now and they're doing their own connecting, and that's amazing, and being really grateful for that moment of connection like that. And and other groups that I'm a part of. Um I I do energetic and healing work, but I also like being parts of groups where that type of energy is happening in different ways, and being able to do meetups, even if it's online, to kind of sit in that energy with another group of people. And I think, yeah, that's really something that we want to connect with and build with this podcast, is really just being able to give people a safe, open place to explore things. And, there is no stupid question. There is no wrong way to approach something that is a difficult thing to approach. People have questions and have a hard time figuring out like how they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to act. It's such a weird it can be such a weird community overall, the spiritual community, when you stop to think about it, and especially because it's kind of hit a pocket of being trendy now,
Mhm. Mhm.
that as people are starting to find it, it's like, well, can I be spiritual if I don't like yoga? Can I be spiritual if I'm not vegan? Can I be spiritual if I like
Cuss like a
to
sailor?
if I like to cuss like a sailor and go to theme parks,
Hell yeah.
it's like, yes, all of the above.
Yep.
And we just want to make it comfortable. We just want to make it comfortable so you can actually relax into it and have an opportunity to, again, connect with that side of play and exploration, and see things through a lens of wonderment, like you would when
Mhm.
you're a kid. and you're exploring something new and you're trying to figure it out and see how it works. And I think we expect that there's probably going to be more people who are already familiar with what we're talking about that will find us, because that's just the nature of things and keywords and hashtags and all that business. But at the same time, I also hope that people who are just starting to dip their toe into this world and are trying to sort those things out have the opportunity to find us as well, because I think it's a nice place to explore that without feeling like you're not doing it right, because there is no way for you to not
Do it
do it
wrong.
right or
Yeah, you
to
can't
do
do
it
it wrong.
wrong.
Yeah.
As long as you're being true to yourself
Yeah.
and not trying to make yourself look like somebody else's version of whatever it means to be spiritual or spiritually awakened or be going through an awakening or to be going through an ascension. I mean, these are all some pretty lofty words and terms that really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. It's just a way to try to convey a really tough place that I think most of us, even on an unconscious level, are trying to navigate.
Well, and the truth is you can't not be navigating it. You can be
Yeah,
unaware that that's what you're navigating, but you
yeah,
can't not be navigating this, because this is what the energy is right now. This is what is called for right now. And the only difference between us talking about the woo and the people who don't really resonate with the woo is frequency. Like, just
you're just
because
not there
you're not
yet.
tuned in, yeah, you're not tuned into it doesn't mean the radio station went away. You hit a different button, you're going to go back to that radio station. It's still going to be there. And that's what this is. It's just a frequency that we've
And it's
tapped into.
funny. It's funny because I actually have I have an appointment with a client coming up who is very much a skeptic and very much, and I really we had a conversation the other day, and I really really enjoyed that conversation because I got the opportunity to say, whether you believe in anything I do or not seriously does not affect me. I'm basing what I do off of my experiences, and you not having had those experiences yet doesn't take that away from me at all. And I was so grateful in that moment for just that realization, because I don't know that I had been actively aware that I felt that way. Like, yes, I felt that way, but I hadn't acknowledged it like out loud to other people and myself. And it was like,
Right.
yeah, well, that's it is. I'm like, is that how I feel? Yeah. 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 I
Check
mean,
in moment. Is that how I feel? It is how I feel.
it is how I feel. It really doesn't
Look at me
matter.
grow.
No skin off my nose, buddy. It's like, if it doesn't work for you, then I just know that it's not working for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you may never get to a place where it works for you, or you may get to a place that works for you.
Yeah.
Either of those things work for me, because that's not my
Mm-hmm.
path. As long as I'm still being true to myself and I'm still honoring all of those things within me, it doesn't matter what you do. You're over, you have dominion over that. That's part of your free will to deal with, whether you're ready to deal with that right now or not, in this lifetime or not. But just the fact that it was exciting for me to come across someone that was open to exploring that and was willing to say out loud, I'm not sure about any of this, but I'm willing to give it a shot. And then on the same side was um happy to hear me say, I can't tell you for certain if this is going to work for you or not, because a lot of that is really up to you. I know from my end what happens, and I know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
capable of doing and what that looks like. I kind of take that and then I hand it back to you and say, well, what do you want to do with that?
Mm-hmm.
And
And
that's your
that's the thing
choice.
about healing work. It's like you can go to a healer, but if you're going to a healer with the expectation that they are going to heal you, you're going to be surprised because it means that the intention for that session is already set. And the intention for that session, little do you know, is to show you that the only person who can heal you is you.
Mm-hmm.
That healer is not going to be able to heal you because what a healer does is reflect back to you where your work lies. And they do it through various ways. And if you are willing to release things, then a healer can help you and aid you with that release work. But it has to come from you.
Yeah.
All of it's rooted from you. And the thing that's difficult to understand is that just because you have a conscious mind intention to let everything go, your conscious mind intention is to let everything go because it feels bad and you don't want to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Your higher self's intention is we can't let that go because you haven't yet felt it. So if you're going to a healer with the intention to let everything go because you feel like shit, be ready for whatever's making you feel like shit to be amplified so
Mm-hmm.
that you can then do the work to feel it, which is the only way to actually let it go.
We're sitting here with the magnifying glass over the ant going,
Yeah.
you feel that?
Yeah. You feel that? Are you aware of that? Does that
you,
hurt? Okay,
you
let it
feel that
go.
now? Okay.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah.
Why don't you cry about it? Why don't you cry about it? Go ahead, cry about it. Like really, no, really cry about it. Please,
Please.
please cry about it. You need to cry about this. Or you need to get angry about this. Or you need to release whatever emotion this makes you feel because that's the actual release.
Yeah. Or you just need to look at it. You need to stare it in the face and
Mm-hmm.
and feel
Demystify it.
through it, demystify it, acknowledge that it exists.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that it's a thing that you went through, or that it's a thing that you're feeling, or that it's a way that you interpreted a thing, or that it's a perspective that you were in the process of shifting. It's, and it's like, and we work with people in very different ways. Heather is a regressionist. She works with past life regression, and so she is,
And counseling,
and
spiritual
counseling,
counseling. Mm-hmm.
and you're working in a very interesting way. I'm working a lot with sound and frequency and tools of that nature. And there are so many different ways that you can go about exploring all of those things that are starting to come up for you, especially in this season. It's like, if it's all starting to come up and you're like, I don't know what to do with any of it, this is a great time to kind of sit with, well, what would feel good? What would be interesting to me? Like, what would I find fascinating? What
Mm-hmm.
would I like to learn about myself, and how would I like to learn that?
Mm-hmm.
How would I like to
Investigative
experience
questions.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, investigate yourself. It's a quick and easy tool, and when particularly when you hit on an answer that you feel in your heart or your solar plexus, for instance, it gives you butterflies, it makes you nervous, or you get kind of like a lump in your throat. That's where you know you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that's calling you right now. That's where the discomfort is coming from. And you have to step through those fears and take the journey, because once you step into a fear, you are in a long, long hallway. And it feels very constrictive and tight and dark, and you're not sure where the trip hazards are, and you're not sure where the end is, and you're not sure if there are doors. And if there are doors, should I open them? Should I not open them? It is a very unsettling to be in a fear hallway.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the way to your joy. You go through that hallway, it is no longer blocking your connection to the frequency of joy that resides within you.
Yeah.
How amazing is that thought that there is a light at the end of the tunnel? There is a reward waiting for me, not a reward that will be given to me because I was a good girl or boy and I did the work, a reward that is already mine for the taking that I just can't quite grasp yet.
There are doors that you don't know about yet. There are doors that
Yeah,
you
to me,
haven't
that's
seen yet.
scary. Like the second you say that, I'm like, oh, shut up. I just went through a door. I don't want to go through another door. Don't make me go through another door. I know there are doors, but I don't even, I'm in a place personally where I don't even want to think about another door. Thank you very much. I just want to get comfortable with the space I just landed in. I need some time to decompress. I feel I am suffering a PTSD hangover. So the second you said there are doors you don't even know about, I was like, shut your face. Just shut up. Just shut up. Don't speak anymore. But both
and I get
can
excited
exist.
about that.
Sure, because you're not in a tunnel.
I wouldn't say I'm not in a tunnel, but you're
not in like total PTSD mode.
Well, we're just not in the same tunnel. That's all.
Exactly. Like, yeah.
I take a nice, neat inventory of all my doors, and then I create what's behind them. And for me,
are you such a Virgo?
Because that's my rising sign.
Such a Virgo. Oh my God.
Because that's my rising sign. That's what wants to bubble up. And it's hilarious. But, but for me, the thought of, hey, there are doors that you haven't explored yet means, oh, whew, good. That means that there are
sure.
Like,
and when I'm in a good place
out there.
Right. And when I'm in a good place, that's what that means too. But when I'm in a precarious or feel I'm in a precarious place, it means the opposite. So it really just comes into a shift in interpretation and perspective, as all things do. That's the only thing that you have control over. That's the only thing that you can change in your life. But knowing that when you're in the depths of it, not too helpful. You just kind of have to trust that that's nature, that that's reality. And that takes some time to get there. But they do coexist. These seemingly opposite points of view coexist. They're just, we haven't gotten used to yet seeing the entire spectrum that links them together. We're used to seeing the very strong contrast, but there is a connective tissue between those two things. And this process is about learning to really get connected with that connective tissue, if that makes sense. It's really learning to see the in-between.
And again, I think that's what's so beautiful about the two of us is that we can be on the same page about something, but at the same time, we're seeing it from a completely different angle. So
absolutely,
I think
different and differing perspectives.
So I think, no matter what you have going on out there, I hope that between the two of us, we can give you some deeper insights that are going to help you through those things. And, if you have questions about things like, what to try, we're here for that. I mean, we've been
through the conversation going.
Get the conversation rolling. Let's do it. We're all about it. And we really do want to open that up to y'all. So if you have questions about different types of modalities and, and what can I do and what can I try, please, send them on over to us. Don't feel afraid to pick our brains because we are a wealth of information and we are happy to pass that information along in the best way that we can. So sometimes that's through the podcast. Sometimes that's through insights. More will be evolving through Patreon. And we hope that you all are going to be down for just diving in with us because that's where the fun is, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is totally where the fun is. Well, what do you think? Have we done the thing?
Oh, yeah. We've way done the thing.
All right. Well, our mission is to empower you. And if you have enjoyed this show, please comment, please subscribe and share. Help us appease the algorithmic gods because it empowers us to empower others. And if you would like to stay up to date with our insights, our downloads, and upcoming shows, check us out on Instagram by searching Using Our Inside Voice, all one word. And until next time, this is Jamie.
And this is Heather.
And we are using our outside voice to say stay safe, stay sovereign, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.